Thanks for inviting me to the Grange. I have a soft voice, so I'll try to make good use of this mic. So we're starting with measure E, and to explain measure E, I need to give a little background into measure Y. And I made this little simple graph, and I'm sorry I didn't have a better PDF program. I just heard we had a screen we could have put that on. But basically, in 1998, El Dorado County voters approved Measure Y to prevent traffic congestion and to require new development to pay for improvements needed to offset traffic impacts from their projects. It passed with 61% approval. After it was passed, there was a battle of actually implementing it. And I'm not sure when it was actually implemented, but 2 years later they were still battling over how to craft the rules and laws to be able to actually put it in place. So so it was put in place, and it kind of put us into a more natural growth pattern. Developers had to pay for their own way, and it prevented gridlock from happening within the county. In 2008, Measure Y was brought back for a vote as required when it was passed in '98, but it was amended by the Board of Supervisors prior to being placed on the ballot. This new version of Measure Y was extended another 10 years with 72% of the vote. Two of the major changes in 2008 was to allow the Board of Supervisors to add roads that could go to level of service F with a 4/5 vote, and to allow the use of public funds to pay for improvements for new development. Changing the language weakened Measure Y's original purpose. So, blowing in the wind here. So basically, no level of service F is like stop and go traffic gridlock. So basically, you couldn't allow a project that would create this, unless it was brought back to the voters to approve that going to gridlock. And no taxpayer funds. They couldn't use public, local, state, or federal funds to provide roads for needed developer improvements. So when it was changed, they actually gave the board a 4/5 vote to allow this gridlock if the Board of Supervisors thought that project was okay to do that. And then it also allowed local, state, and federal funds to be used to offset funds for needed developer improvements. So what Measure E does, basically, we brought this back because we felt all these projects were coming down the pike, like Sandstino and I just lost my place. Marble Valley, the El Dorado Hills Central golf course project that's over there, Sandstino, Dixon Ranch, and then there was another one that's just. So a lot of community groups were getting really concerned about all these projects coming forward. And most of them, if they were approved, would create that level of service F that had not been allowed in the past. So we figured it was the 4/5 vote being out there that these people were bringing their projects forward, because it would come down to the board having to do this to allow those projects. And then the other issue, you can see a lot of roads have been built or starting. We've used a lot of local funds on certain areas for road improvements. So anyway, back to Measure E. We went back to the no LSF on roads unless approved by voters, and we actually replaced the exact language that they had in the section that addressed that. We said no local funds can be used to offset road funds needed for developer improvements. The problem when they first did the one in '98 was people were frustrated because we couldn't even take federal and state grants to improve our freeways and different things. And so we left that in, that we could still accept state and federal grants to improve our highways and stuff for capacity. So basically, and then we cleaned up some of the language, because in that 2 years that they battled over how they were going to implement it, we wanted to make sure that those things were included that they had come up with. And then a lot of stuff has been added to that measure, and so we went through and cleaned out some of the stuff that had been added throughout the years and tried to get it really close to the initial Measure Y. And the other issue that's of concern is that Measure Y that's in place right now expires in 2018, and then we really don't have anything. And then it's basically the Board of Supervisors have the right to direct road funds wherever they want for new projects. How much time is that at?
I'm sorry, that mic's still on.
Okay. So I think I'm going to make it that simple, and then if there's anything else that's within this or what Jack brings up, maybe we can do it within the questions and answers. Okay?
So, Mr. Sweeney, what's wrong with this?
Gee, I'm scared of this microphone. Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I hope you get something out of this tonight. It was good for me to kind of go back and review some of this material. I haven't done it for a while. I got off the board at the end of 2012, and I've tried to not be a kibitzer, so here I am taking a good shot at it. Things are not quite always viewed by different people in the same way as other people, so I'm going to give you a little bit different aspect. What I want to point out is that in November 3rd, 1998 election, Measure Y passed by 32,800 votes. There was a Measure V that was a population cap, that was a real no-growth move, and it failed by 65%. It failed, I don't have the number there for some reason. In March of 2005, the 2004 general plan was on, and it passed 23,415 to 22,554, so it just barely passed. What's interesting is that Measure D failed. It was another traffic maneuver to change Measure Y again, and it failed by 60% of the people voted no, 27,000 people voted no. In 2008, actually, in late 2007, I started working with a group of the opponents to Measure Y and the proponents of Measure Y to say a couple things we have to fix here. One thing we have to fix is we've stopped economic development because these conditions on these roads mean that if somebody wants to build a new grocery store or hardware store, women's and children's wear store, that they have to build all these roads, and it's too much money the way you've got it working. So we changed that section. We opened up economic development and left it on the housing the same. But when we got done, we reached consensus on those changes that Sue was talking about. That wasn't just the Board of Supervisors didn't do that. With the help of Supervisor Briggs, I worked with both sides of the issue, and we worked out what we thought was a consensus. There certainly were some people that didn't like either side of it, believe me. And my name was mud for a while on both sides. But interestingly enough, that measure that was reached by consensus passed 72%, but it was 59,000 votes. Almost 60,000 voters voted for that. That's 1.8 as many times people as voted for the original Measure Y. Almost twice the number of people voted in favor of the consensus agreement that's now in place. And by the way, Measure Y expires in 2018, but its ghost lives on in the general plan. It is to be found in the general plan. It is there. It is there in place. It will continue. So, what you see today in front of you will cause the same kind of confusion that Sue was talking about. It took about a year and a half to implement the original Measure Y because nobody was really sure what it meant. who was supposed to do or how much anybody was supposed to pay, or how you were supposed to calculate it. And we had to set up all of these things and figure out how to implement that measure. Well, here we go again. We're going to change all the rules. We've just spent a few $1 million. The board met today talking about TIM fees and Measure Y, and there's going to be a substantial reduction in the TIM fees. Like if it was across the board, it'd be about 25 to 30%. But they're taking those down. Not that they're not going to charge the people for the roads, but they've taken out some roads that didn't need to be in there, that were shown that were paper roads that didn't need to be there. Now, when I looked at this section in the ballot measure, and y'all should read that stuff, there's a section TX or TC-XA, section 3. It requires the road improvements to be in place before any discretionary permit can be issued. And that means that they'd have to build the roads before they could get to permits. Well, who would make that kind of investment? So that just stops everybody from doing anything. I could go through a list of scenarios about people that might want to build, but that would kill anybody doing anything. If you want that, that's what you vote for. It'll kill everything, I'll tell you for sure. Currently, we approve projects with a condition that they have to build the roads before the project can open, before they can occupy it with homes. They have to have the water before they occupy it with homes. There's another measure, TC, XF, and G, and that measure would require roadways to be constructed at the expense of the developer, regardless of the traffic source. And we've had since about 1976 or 8 a series of lawsuits in the state of California and in the nation that talked about the word nexus. That means that what you require someone to do has to be relative. What you require of them in the way of improvements has to be relative to what they're going to build and to their use. You can't tell them you've got to fix the old road, you've got to put on the capacity for your project, and you've got to put on the future capacity. They only have to pay in their part of that impact. It's called nexus. So, in my mind, those two sections violate the nexus statutes. Am I getting there?
You're there.
All right, I'll quit.
So I'll take up my minute real fast. So when they changed the general plan just recently, they actually took out some of those safeguards that were put in when we adopted Measure Y, and that he says that will be there in the general plan. And any given Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors can amend that general plan. So unless we have it as law, as we're trying to, this is our biggest opportunity to do this. If we don't do this time, I can tell you they're ready to go gangbusters on these projects. And as far as discretionary projects go, the policy set is referring to if a project creates gridlock, that no land user, discretionary is things that you have to have legislative permission to change something. It's not a by right. Ministerial is something that you own a piece of property, it's commercial. I don't see it affecting commercial because we've got all of our commercial already zoned for that. The biggest issue this is going to have on when you're changing farmland to high-density residential, and that's a discretionary decision. So discretionary will be applied if that project creates gridlock or gridlock already exists. And there's ways to mitigate that. If they, if a developer wants to do that so bad and the county just thinks it's the best project ever, they can put it up to a vote of the people. Or they can do things like set up a bond so that they make sure that that road is provided for. The problem that we have right now, I call it paper roads. If the project, if there's a road on paper from the capital improvement plan that says that can be provided to help facilitate that project. They'll allow the project even if the road's not there yet. We call that paper roads, and we needed to find a way to stop that. So there's my rebuttal.
Okay, now we'll talk about,
She added one thing. No, I don't think it's a rebuttal, but you can't amend the general plan any given Tuesday. There's a state law process for amendments to general plan. You have to do CEQA, and it takes a year to a year and a half, sometimes 2 years to amend the general plan. So it is not, let's not have people thinking you just walk in here, snap your fingers, and amend the general plan. It doesn't happen.
And I disagree because I've been there and I've watched them do it.
okay, now we're going to talk about Measure G, which as I understand it is more complicated, or has more components. So, Ms. Taylor, will you tell us what it is and why you want it?
Questions on E first before we move forward?
Let's wait till the end.
Okay. I was waiting for that. Hold on. Okay. Sorry. So we started Measure G when we were watching what the Board of Supervisors just recently, like we said, I call it overhauling our existing general plan, and which included also rezoning over 37,000 parcels without property owners' notification. We saw this coming. They justified it that the zoning didn't match our land use. There's provisions in our general plan that allow for that, but they moved forward on that basis, and so we put a measure together that basically said where a land use designation is inconsistent with the current zoning, the land use designation shall be amended to match the existing, where a land use designation is inconsistent with the current zoning, the land use designation shall be amended to match existing zoning. It was really simple. It was so much less complicated than what they did. They rezoned parcels. When you do a massive rezoning of parcels throughout the whole county, while they also rewrote the description for the zoning districts at the same time, we're watching people that are now going to the county to do things, finding out that this has happened that had no idea. And we think it's going to be a problem that's going to be coming forward. They rezoned my property, and I said I'd rather that they didn't. It changed the use of what I could do. The second, and we thought this would save us millions of dollars. If this is the whole basis for doing this project with the cost that it took the county to do this, that this would just simplify it. Number two was future decisions for land use changes shall be based on the land compatibility matrix attached. We attached it's a compatibility. It's very common in land use planning that you make sure that certain land use designations that are adjacent to other land uses are compatible with each other. The third one, the board over the years after the 04, Jack mentioned the 2004 plan that was voted 51%. There was a huge battle. Lots of money was spent. You had developers' interest versus the community that wanted to retain our rural growth pattern. So they made a lot of promises. They said, we're going to protect your agriculture, you're going to have recreation, all these wonderful things we're going to be taken care of. And Measure Y would be embedded in this thing, and utopia would happen. So then as soon as they adopted it, they started making drastic changes to it that they were not implementing the things they promised they would implement. Instead, they were increasing density on land use. They created a higher density mixed use policy with zero line setbacks on commercial space, eliminating some of our commercial property. Just on and on, and Jack actually rewrote the buffers for certain places of agriculture that did it with a reinterpretation of the general plan. So we went through, and a lot of things that they changed, we asked to be put back the way it was in 2004. And that's basically the next 4 items on there that have to do with ag buffers, mixed use. Instead of being 20 units in an acre, we're asking them to go back to 10 units an acre, which means mixed use is when you have commercial with residential combined. They changed it so that you can actually put in high-density residential and not even put in the commercial. So we asked it to be put back the way it was. The cultural and historical resources have been ignored for the last 30 years. You know, we put buildings on grave sites. We desecrate so many of our historic areas that it's really disheartening. And I can list them, but we actually have a Save Our County website that we show many of these things that have been destroyed throughout the years that are vital to our culture here. In that plan, it also said that the county would implement a water supply and demand management plan. We still haven't done that. There was a group that started working on it, but they were stopped in the process. And then the last one is, well, there's 2 more. We have scenic corridors and Vista Point regulations that were also a policy promised in our 04 plan. And when they put the billboard in Shingle Springs, they put it on the one most critical Vista Point that we have in El Dorado County because they had not implemented these policies. So now when you drive up the hill and look across the Sierras, you see that big billboard right in the heart of Shingle Springs on a critical Vista Point that should never have been allowed there. So we're saying, okay, you're going to continue to ignore these. We want them implemented before you do any more land use changes. Yes, we don't want any more discretionary projects approved until you implement these policies, because those discretionary projects could harm these if we don't put these in place first. And once they do it, then they can, you know, develop a way as long as they've protected these areas that we were concerned with. So that's Measure G, and I have to add that these measures there was an enormous effort put out to pass these initiatives. And it started basically with the Shingle Springs Community Alliance, and they had a concern with the development that was coming close to them. And the whole community voted to move forward to get these initiatives passed. It takes around 10,000 signatures per initiative to get these on the ballot. We did 3 of them without any paid walkers. And this was done without a single paid walker, which was stated from I got a text from an opponent down in Sacramento, and he said, "We don't agree, but kudos to you, Sue, because it's pretty amazing and almost unheard of in politics to be able to do that." So I hope that you'll take this to heart and really understand the stress of getting these passed this year, because I don't see anything like this. This was phenomenal, what happened. And this may be the last opportunity that you see this, because we're at the cusp of either being seriously developed throughout this county or retaining our rural nature. Thank you.
So, believe it or not, this is not a ragtag county we live in. I think we were incorporated in 1850. One of the supervisors the other day said to me, "We've just about got all the problems solved from the past." And I said, "Well, I don't think so, because it's been in business for 165 years. Some supervisor along the way, someplace, did something right, or we wouldn't be here." And I'm getting the feeling that what everybody else has done before is wrong. And I'll tell you, if you don't want more people coming, I agree with you. I'd like to go back to what it was in 1955 when I got out of high school. There were only 23,000 people in the whole county. It was really nice. We opened up our hearts, made room for people to come to this county and live and have a good life. And I think we've done it in, I'll call it a farmer's way of doing it in an orderly fashion. And I think it works. I'm happy to have lived here all my life, and I'm I'm happy to have shared what I've had with other people. Forgive me, that's not part of my notes, but when you talk about planning, the general plan and zoning, there are two different things in the state law. The general plan is the Bible, and there's a process for its creation and adoption and what you have to have in it. It's dictated by state law. State law says you must have a general plan. The state law says you may have zoning. So to turn the cart around, let the cart push the horse, these folks now want to take the zoning and make it drive the general plan. Well, the zoning was created back in the 60s, 1960s, and in some places it was just a carte blanche kind of a thing, and in some places it was done with a little bit of thought. And then there were some area plans, but you can't just say, change the general plan to fit the zoning. That's against the law. The state says it's the other way around. I want to give you one strong example that's in this document that they have. And they don't want this development to happen in rural centers. We're in a rural center. They want the rural center, if there's development, to have sewer and water systems. I think that'd be devastating. We thought we needed development in the rural centers so that people that lived in the rural areas didn't have to drive to Placerville or Sacramento or Auburn to get their goods. We thought it'd be better to go buy local. We thought maybe we could create some economic development by having a little more density in the rural center. You could create some new jobs. People would be happier. When I was a kid, we had development, economic development in the rural centers. We had lumber mills and we had farming, and they were thriving communities in and amongst themselves. They didn't need all these other people. It's just like the water plant. We have a water plant. I worked on the water board. I see two members of the EID board are here. I think we've got a good water plant. We've not run out of water for anybody. We've done what the state said. In spite of that, they've still got water they can sell, but the state says they can't sell it to you. We've got a long-term water plan to see that we get the water that it looks like we might need to support this general plan. And they've worked hard on that. There is a plan in place. You can go look at it. You can look at all these things on the county website. You can look at the EdCarp website and see a different view of all this. What you're hearing is simply wrong. And I'm going to tell you, after serving 4 terms and a part of another term as a supervisor, I just want to tell you what I always said. If you don't like I'm doing, get me out of here. Elect good supervisors. Spend more time looking at who's going to represent you on the Board of Supervisors, and less time trying to make the laws that they need to work with yourselves. Let them make the laws. Find good people to serve our community. Thank you for being here tonight.
So I wanted to, because when they started talking about the land use and zoning, I actually needed to see what all that meant about 8-9 years ago. And I actually went to the state and asked them, what does this mean? And we asked planning, and planning said, basically by changing and saying they had to overhaul the general plan, they're saying our general plan was not compliant. And they would never say that, because it wasn't. So there was no state gun put to our head to make these changes. It was somewhere down the road. Yes, we all had zoning. Somebody came along and painted land use over that zoning for what they wanted in the future. And what they just did by just flipping all that zoning to what the land use is, they benefited a lot of people that somehow knew that they would have that done without going through a process that would have been what the rest of us would have to do when we go to change your zone or do something different to our property. There was a lot of favors that were given when they overhauled this general plan. And to say that we had to do it to stay compliant with the state is kind of misleading, because the state, the county says themselves that they were compliant. They haven't, the only thing that they worry about is the housing element. Because if the housing element's in place, they'll get more road funds. Our housing element is good for 5 more years, or for 8 years forward. So it was already okay. There was, in my mind, no reason to do this except to, for the benefit of some of the people that got their properties rezoned. And then I just have to say that when Jack talks about these rural centers, they're going to have cute little commercial spaces, and I don't know if anybody knows what rural centers are, community regions, but they're actually the urban boundary lines where they want to put higher density development. And planning goes before the board and says there's no difference between a rural center and a community region. El Dorado Hills is basically in a community region. So, you know, our trusted board of supervisors just approved a box store on historic Main Street, Georgetown, the Dollar General. And to say that we need to trust these people, I see that we need the rules in place to keep them to their promise. Thank you.
So let's go directly to questions. I'll have the microphone here, so just line up to ask your questions. You can make pointed questions, but please, these people are our guests. They've come here to talk to us tonight, so no arguing. Ask your question, get your answer. Thank you very much. Who's first?
So I guess I'd like to address this to you, Jack, to ask you sort of what you see the solution to the concerns expressed by Sue are, because I don't think that most developers or home builders have the best interests of the county in mind. It can be sold that way because, yes, building does create jobs. But I, for one, who have been a homeowner in this town for 14 years, I didn't move here in hopes that someday there'd be more commercial things in town so that I don't have to drive to Placer. I live here because the Lotus Coloma Valley is what it is, as it is. And yes, I'd like to keep it that way. And I don't think that the supervisors necessarily have the best interests of people that have that view. I know you can't stop growth cold in its tracks. We just can't stop time and not have anything happen. But I think there's a lot of sentiment that the likes of Santino and Marble Valley don't add to the quality of life. Yes, they create some jobs, all the houses are being built, but they don't really add to maintaining the quality of the life that I think a lot of us moved here or grew up here to appreciate. So I'm just wondering what you see the solution is, because I don't always see that the supervisors have those interests in mind. Case in point, I don't want to start a political argument here, but our recent election, I think, was a very good case in point of pro-growth versus slow growth between the two candidates that we had to choose from. And I think that election was heavily swayed by money from outside interests who don't really have the best interests of El Dorado County or the district that was represented by that supervisor race in mind. They have their bottom line in mind. A homeowner, a home builder will, I've been in the lending business all my life, and the old adage was, if a bank will lend a builder the money, they'll build it. And when you relate to commercial properties, if they can lease it up, they own it. If they can't, then the bank owns it. And it's all about just driving the bottom line, not necessarily about the quality of the community. So I'd be curious to know what you think the solution is. I see some flaws in this measure, both measures. But I don't know where the solution is to address that concern, that growth isn't the be-all, end-all answer to everything.
Two comments to that. Well, when you pull weeds all day, you can't stand up now. So there's two things that are in my mind about what your dissertation was. And first is, these folks gelled up a lot of these ideas based on 3 or 4 specific projects. And the county should not do its planning based on 3 or 4 projects. It ought to have a general plan in place. And then they have a hearing to see if these plans fit or don't fit that general plan. And then maybe after that process, that these folks go through, they do an EIR, that's CEQA, and they do all the hearings. If the public still doesn't like it, they can go to court and stop it, and they've stopped some projects. I mean, there's a whole process to follow. And I think the process would have been better had they followed that than trying to make the amendments to the general plan. These two documents are very difficult to go through, and I know the plan, general plan fairly well, and I know the law fairly well. They're difficult to follow. I would like to have had 3 hours to spend with you to do what my English teacher used to do and go through the framework to show you how each one of these work. And that's what you need to do to understand the bill. So that's one issue of how it goes. But the other issue that you look at is the supervisors not having your best interest. Then you have to do two things. You have to work to get better candidates, and you have to work harder for those candidates. And I mean, I've run some pretty serious elections. They announced, when I took over after the death of an incumbent, they announced on July 9th, I think it was, that the election would be on August the 5th or something like that. I had 2 months to put a campaign together. And I beat 2 other candidates, and I got 56% of the votes. And I did not take developer money. And I can go get my books and show them to you if you like. So that's what you have to do. But what we have to remember is this is not a mishmash of things. What we're trying to have is a general plan. It needs to be a very carefully sewn together quilt of the whole county. And my fear is that what being proposed here tears tatters in that quilt that will send us awry from what we're supposed to be doing. And Sue said something. She said we didn't have a gun in our heads. We did. We were on our 3rd extension of the general plan time by the State Department of Planning. And had we not adopted the 2004 plan when they did, the state was going to take it over. So if you think the county's bad to deal with, let it happen for the state to take it over.
So Jack was talking about the 2004 plan. I was talking about after it was adopted, that they just made this major change last December, which we did not have our head to do that change. And to answer your question, you mentioned people like to label us as no growth. I mean, I'm a building designer. I actually design buildings. There are around 17,000 parcels that people can build on by right because they're ministerial. They're not a discretionary. You don't have to go and change the land use to do something on it. So most of us believe more of a natural growth pattern. And that's what El Dorado County's always been about. And this wasn't just about 3 projects. There's been a lot of stuff simmering for a long time. I was really disheartened when the county allowed Sierra Pacific Industries to tear down that old mill. According to their own policies, they said anything over 50 years has to go through a process before you can tear down these old buildings. Seems like we're always fighting to retain our history. And there's and the other thing with candidates, it seems like every candidate that goes out to get elected says, I'm going to protect you and your rural nature. And then as soon as they get in, they start working to urbanize the county. And when it happens over and over and over again, sometimes you need laws in place that no matter who gets in there, that you have those policies that will protect you.
All right. Stand up. You guys have to. I just wanted to point out a few things that can happen, that these are going to help control, and ask you to comment on. Sandstino, I don't know if anybody knows about that in this room, but that's 4,000 unit development right off of Ponderosa and Highway 50. There is no requirement at this time to improve the traffic intersection at Highway 50. So imagine if any of you commute or use the intersection of Highway 50 and Ponderosa, another 4,000 houses going to be with cars, but it's a lot without Measure E. Think about it. In Measure G, the conservation of our historic resources, this building, I don't know how many of you know it, could go along with Mount Murphy Bridge, which is another historic resource in our county. That's one of the options being considered, is the loss of Mount Murphy Bridge and this building. So that's one option. You know about probably the school. So this community is in serious jeopardy of a radical change in its historic character in the very near future, and Measure G would seriously help that. It would give us some tools anyway to help preserve our character. And one of your comments, Mr. Sweeney, was we can always go to court if we don't like what the county's trying to do to us. That might be true, but we have to use our own money. The county gets to use taxpayer money, and it's unlimited, and they can't wait. And they hire attorneys left and right. That's one of the major expansions that the CAO has made in recent years, is to hire lots of attorneys. Thank you.
This one?
My name is Steve Ross, and came to the meeting because one of the areas that I was concerned with was traffic on Missouri Flat Road. I know that I went to quite a few meetings of the Diamond Springs Advisory Group, and at those meetings, developers came and pitched their projects. And the interesting thing to me was that every project that they pitched was a high-density project. And there are reasons for that. There is sewer, there is electricity, and there is water along a certain area. And it's advantageous for the developers to go high density. However, if you've been to Missouri Flat at traffic time and seen what it's like now, you can imagine what it would be like with quite a few high densities on top of each other. So it's unfortunate that the Board of Supervisors is weighted towards the developers. The decisions that they make are mostly in the developer's interest. And so all these plans with the roads are necessary for new development, but if that development overpowers the capacities that we have, then we have serious long-range problems. That was my concern. And I'd like to get your opinion, Jack, on the amount of high density that's going into certain areas, because I know you were on the board for many years, and you were there at every turn. Thank you.
I'm never sure how to answer a speech. So you talked about Missouri Flat, and it's a really good example of what's wrong when the state demands that the county does planning. They don't demand that of schools. If you look at the location and how many schools there are on Missouri Flat Road, watch when the traffic queues. Watch before and after schools, the traffic jams that are caused by the school buses, because you've got such a concentration by having bigger and better schools in one location instead of having the country schools where I went. You concentrate all these people and all these cars, and it causes nothing but traffic jams. If you look at Missouri Flat Road in the summertime, you don't find the kind of problems that you find when school's in session. You just don't. They're there, but not nearly to the intensity. So why wouldn't you have high density in an area where you have all your services? That simply makes sense. But what was happening in the Missouri Flat area that you're talking about, we were taking all the high density for the whole county practically. El Dorado Hills says, we don't want high density. Well, damn bad, you can take your share high density too. And that created the problem. You gotta have high density, amongst the high density, you've gotta have low income housing. And that's the state law. It says you've gotta have percentages of this stuff. But you've got to spread it around, and that's why you need a good general plan. And you know, I'll tell you, I'll take all the stuff you want to throw at me, but I'll just tell you one thing. It's hard to sit there in that chair with people hollering at every side and make those decisions day in and day out. It's a hard task, job, and you have to do your homework. So I think on the buy, we've done a pretty good job. Maybe some people don't want to live in those areas, then move out in the rural areas, move out in the country, and try and help your community protect itself from somebody coming in and invading it. But that's how communities work together. And I just don't think the answers are here today in Measure E and Measure G. They're just going to add more confusion. Because if you do vote for it, again, you're going to think you're protected. And Sue says those people up there will just change it any Tuesday, so who knows what will happen.
Well, I have to say, if you vote, this is law. They can't change law. What they can change is things in the general plan. And what the Missouri Flat area was actually slated for they're taking on all the low-income housing for the county. So if you're going to build more luxury homes in El Dorado Hills, you have to get more transportation funds so you can have new roads. You need to show that you can facilitate more low-income housing. So a group of people decided that Missouri Flat would be the place slated for all of that growth, along with all of a lot of the box stores that they're putting along. What Jack's talking about, and I actually helped to sue on this issue, the county. There's a school that's there that at 7:15 and 2:15, it's gridlock. The kids are out on the street because there's nowhere to go. There's no place for the parents to, this is just off Missouri Flat. So if you turn in there, you've got, during those times, kids literally swarming out on the streets trying to find their parents' cars because there's no place at the school for them to park to pick up kids. So they were going to put a little mini strip mall right there off of that road where these kids are mixed up. So Jack approved that project, and a group of us sued that project because it didn't deal with mitigation of the infrastructure. You can't create gridlock and not mitigate it, and that's what that project did. So for them to continue to increase capacity in that area, they're going to have to expand Missouri Flat interchange 3 times as big as it is now, and have a lot more roads expanded in that area to do the amount of growth that they need to do. So that's what they're slating for that Missouri Flat area. And I don't know how that question, but I think that was answering your thought on how this plan got crafted and why that laid out the way it did.
I'm sure we have more questions, but I want to remind you that these grassroots people have no money. You're not going to get a mailbox full of flyers telling you all the good things about E&G, according to them. This is your chance to pick her brain, put her on the hot spot. The no vote will have plenty of money until they vote no. These people are harsh.
Unbiased, huh?
Unbiased, yeah. Hi, I'm Patty Boyer, and one of the subjects that I have not heard about is the problem with water. I mean, we're in a drought. Our drought could last for years and years and years. And I know some of the wells have gone dry, that they have us conserving water. I'm on a well, luckily that's not gone dry. But if they expect to have all the density, the housing density that they wanted to do, I don't know how we're going to do that for water. And so that's one of the things I'm very concerned about. I don't know how. And the other is that when I drive up 50 from Sacramento and see all the high density on the left-hand side and the beautiful scenery on the right-hand side, and that's going to all go to density, to housing. I know somebody owns that land. They want some money. The project's 50 is already car-wise. I mean, it's very packed in the mornings. So I don't know how you determine those things. I really don't always trust the Board of Supervisors to get that done, because if you have people that have a lot of property that want to sell it and want to have that high-density housing, and we have no water, and if we're thinking in the future, I think the drought's going to last a long time. So, thank you.
So you asked about the water, which I think everybody's concerned about, and that's why we put it in the measure that they need to implement the water supply and demand and management plan so that everybody in the county can see where we're at with our water. I go to the EID meetings.
Go to the EID website.
I go to the meetings.
Go to the EID website.
I've asked those EID board members questions. I've gotten 3 different answers at the same time when I asked that question, and that's on video. And it is hard to get some of those answers. And I will take what you're asking, and what I've been wanting to do is write down. I get information from all different people that are telling me where that water is, and then I go to the EID board and ask them. And what I almost feel like I need to do is write it all down and see if you agree with what I'm hearing. They're going after water rights right now that I think would, well, that's another issue. I think basically this plan just says the county needs, how water works with EID, if the county opens up land for more development, then EID has to come up with the water to facilitate that new land use change. So they're driven by the Board of Supervisors. And that's why it's really important to have that management plan so that they have an idea what they have and how to make those decisions.
I'm trying to be an unusual Jack Sweeney today. I'm normally a little bit combative, but I'm trying not to be. And I apologize, sir, I can't hear that. But if it's going to take me a minute because there's a process you go through. Believe it or not, there's a process that's really working. Before you can make a discretionary application that's within a water district in El Dorado County, you must first go to that water purveyor and ask for their information on how much water is available. Can they serve your project? What kind of pipes are you going to have to put in? What kind of storage you're going to put in? What kind of sewer you're going to have to put in? All of those kind of things. That's the first step. That's before you even start talking about zoning or general plan or how the layout's going to look. You find out what's the capacity of the system. And you have to have them transmit a copy of that report to the county planning department. Next step, they go down the road. You finally get through the process, the hearings of getting your project approved. Then you've got to go back to the water purveyors and actually buy the water meters. Now, one might say that some people think they don't have the water to sell. EID, as I think last time that I talked, they had about the capacity for 4,000 more meters in hand. And they're working on another 35 or 40,000 acre feet of water right now that have been in applications. One of them I helped start for 15,000. In 1992, we got 15,000 acre feet out of Folsom that we're still trying to get the Bureau to let us have. It's our water. It's in Public Law 92 something or other. It was, the Congress voted that we should have this water out of Folsom. And we're fighting the Bureau to get it. EID's got water that they can get out of Folsom. We have water, but you're right. If we have a 400-year drought, I don't know where we're going to be. We're going to be squeezing rocks. But that's going to be a problem, a whole community-wide problem. The way water is used today, we have the water supplies to take care of the housing and the businesses that we're approving. And you can go on EID's website, you can go on Georgetown's website, South Tahoe PUD's website, you go on the county water agency and you can look at the county water plan. There's a whole plan in place. There really is, I know. I helped put it together.
Let me just reread that real quick, because it's called, isn't it, FIL letter, facilitation, anyway. You go to EID. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, when you, like Jack said, when you have a discretionary project and you want to see if there's water available, you go to EID and you get a special letter that says, today we have 4,000 units available. But it's first come, first served. So they could have allowed enough development to get the land use changes that require 8,000 units, but they haven't picked them up yet. So they can continue to allow for land use changes and those things. And then it's just whoever gets there first is going to be able to actually develop.
That's why you take the second trip and buy the damn meter before you can get the bill.
So did you just say that you're having trouble getting that water out of Folsom Lake? So does that mean that water rights don't guarantee you the water that you think you have the rights to? Because it sounds like you're investing a whole lot on water rights that don't guarantee delivery of the water. But that's not my question. I have a comment and then a question and then a follow-up question. My comment is the first gentleman came up here and he reiterated his question for you 3 times, and it was, what's your solution if you don't like these measures and if you don't want the county to get overrun by high density? What's your solution to stop that if you don't like these measures? And I was listening hard for an answer and I didn't hear an answer from you. I don't know if I missed it, but I think you talked about other stuff, but you didn't answer the question. But what I'm up here to ask, the question I have, and then I'll have a follow-up question, is I've talked to a number of supervisors, previous supervisors, current supervisors, talking to them about these giant subdivisions, your Sanstinos, that they're trying to build. And I asked them, why can't you guys just turn them down? And I keep getting told by acting supervisors, former acting supervisors, to say, we can't. We don't have the discretion to turn them down. I keep getting told that if they meet all the requirements, they pass CEQA, they get everything done, that they jump through all the hoops, that you're forced to approve the project. I just really want to know where that notion comes from. Why do the supervisors think they have to approve all of these projects? And why are they afraid to vote no? That's my first question, and then I have a follow-up one.
That was your second question.
That was the first question for which I'm expecting you to answer, and then I'll have another one.
Okay, young man, I'm just going to tell you something. I'm not on your payroll. I'm a volunteer here tonight, so please be kind to me, even if you don't want to. The first question, wrote it down this time, but what he asked was, what's my solution? My solution is to follow a carefully thought out process in developing or amending the general plan. To throw these 2 initiatives out to the voters who haven't taken the time to look at the existing general plan, to look at the water plans, to look at the various plans that we've worked hard to put in place. Throw these in the middle of them just devastates the process, believe me. So my plan is to stick with the general plan the way they've worked through it right now. Get that finished, get it in place, it needs a little tinkering to fix it, then let's tinker a little bit, but let's go through the process. Let's do it. This document never had a CEQA document on it. You have no idea what the impacts are of this document. None whatsoever. There's nothing written. It just says, let's do this, it'd be a better party.
Well, possibly if the Board of Supervisors had acted to do the same kind of thing, CEQA would have been done. We wouldn't have a lot of frustrated people taking their time to go out and get signatures for these petitions.
You know?
But that's not my question.
No, let me finish. You're going to pick on me. I'm going to come back a little bit.
I'm not picking on you. You're not on the board.
I was there. In 1987, I made a motion to fix a countywide general plan that melded together the 19 area plans that we had. And the staff came back after 6 months and said you couldn't have the area plans anymore. And I fought it like people that are here today that were in the audience then. I fought that and I said it'll devastate this county if we don't have area plans. Well, we got devastated. And here we are with one county-wide general plan that tries to make everybody that's got 10 acres throughout the county have the same size and the same thing on their 10 acres. That doesn't work. They're not in the common communities. We've got to get back to doing some area plans. Okay, I'm getting there. Well, you asked me a question, and you insisted my answer wasn't acceptable, so I'm trying to explain myself. General planning, land use, and zoning are not 2-minute processes. They are long, drawn-out, temper-raising processes for years. We've been working on this general plan. They adopted a 96 plan that went to court, was 2 years in court, got beat up on. Because of the 96 plan, the Bureau couldn't issue the water rights that we had an application for. That was the first thing that held us up. So all these things keep playing each other. What I'm telling you today, why don't I like these measures? The first thing is, it's another holdup in the finalization of a good general plan process. We need to get finished with what we're doing.
My question...
We're going to need to move on to the...
Okay, well, first of all, my question wasn't, why don't you like the measures? The question, which the only question I want an answer to is, why do the existing board members and prior board members believe that they do not have the discretion to turn down these high-density projects?
They don't read the rules.
That's not the topic tonight. The topic is E and G. They're the proponents. They've proposed some complicated measures.
I didn't get to my follow-up question.
Let's see if someone else has it.
Good evening. Thanks to both being here. Thank you for the feedback. My name is Bob Day. My wife is here in Roma. I have two questions for you. One, there was this past year, I thought a pretty good apartment complex being proposed down in Eldorado Hills. I think the board at some point in time, maybe you were part of Jack, I don't know, had approved a hotel there. And I think the purveyor of the hotel or the chain or whatever backed out of it. And then I think some other people got involved. And in my way of thinking, there was a nice apartment complex or apartment building or whatever you want to call it that was approved. And I think, Sue, you may have been involved in that. You may talk on being opposed to that. So I'd like your comments on both of that, how that measure you might apply to that. And then second, it's my understanding, I've been reading some of the detail, and folks, there's lots of detail in both these measures when you start getting into all the detail and the changes that are made that Jack has had reference to. So I think one of the changes that really concerns me that's been highlighted is that Highway 49 here toward the park is going to get changed. The state or the park system or someone has forever been on a bend to Route 49 around this park. And I also think that it ties in with what I hear, and I discussed with our current supervisor, that option 3 on the bridge down the road from here, on the other end of the park, has already been approved, that the decision's already been made. That Mount Murphy Bridge 1 and 2, and that 3 is the option they're going to choose. So I continue to hear rumors of that from rank and file people in DOT and DOT and Caltrans, that that's a done deal. So I wonder how all this ties in with this with 49 being routed around the park, which I think is covered in measure in some of the changes, and with the Mount Murphy Bridge. So again, thank you for being here and taking the questions.
And I think Sue has to answer the question, because that rerouting 49 is in Measure G. So I'll let her answer the question.
It's kind of interesting because I was kind of involved also when they wanted to reroute 49 out of a lot of places. And 49 was established as the golden chain. Its purpose was to tie all these gold rush mining towns together. So when the county wanted to reroute it, they wanted to take it out of 4 mining towns, and we kind of objected to that. And so Coloma being the place where we actually discovered gold, it just doesn't make sense to move 49 out of Coloma. So that's actually in our general plan, and we thought it would be a good time to just, the general plan says we shall promote it or put efforts towards moving Highway 49, probably more the designation of 49 out of the area, out of this corridor. So, we don't care. If there's some purpose, you need another road somewhere else, then call it something else. But it makes no sense to no longer call this road Highway 49 when its initial purpose is to connect gold mine towns. So you brought up some other issues, and it's kind of important to know CEQA when you talk about these general plans. That's the California Environmental Quality Act. And whenever the county does something with it that is a discretionary issue, and actually they have to do some of that on a ministerial, there's rules they got to follow. And if they don't follow them, let's say they go ahead and approve a project. And there's a lot of things on there they didn't follow. If nobody challenges it, after around 30 days, it becomes the new law, and that's allowed. So if, let's say you don't like what they decided because they did violate policies in the general plan and California law, then the public is left to sue that project. And I've been involved with many different times when that has happened because the county didn't follow their policies. So when you talked about the town center apartments on that project, they allowed 55 units per acre, where it was only 24 should have been allowed. They let them create their own design guidelines, the developer, that they followed themselves and not the county design guidelines. They allowed them to violate the specific plan, the general plan, the traffic issues, and the water issues. And so it was challenged, and it was, the judge agreed that the county did not follow their policies and they have to go back and look at it.
Hi, Mike Kovas. Thank you, Sue and Jack. Sue, is there any commercial or residential project that you or the E&G committee to have ever supported?
I'm sure there are.
Can you name
I'm a building designer. I've done projects I have actually, on Merchant Circle, I believe in the local economy, not extractive economy, where we, the public, have to pay for the infrastructure for outside interests to come in to suck the life out of our county. There was 2 projects off of industrial that were in a really bad traffic situation, so I actually designed the building for electronic wiring that did an 8,000 square foot building, which generates local jobs off the Merchant Circle, and one that does metal fabrication. another 5,000 square foot building. I could, I have tons of projects in the area. I do tons of projects throughout the coast. And if you want my portfolio, I would be glad to let you look at it.
I'm just specifically looking for larger projects, not site-specific.
Well, give me a project that you're asking about.
There's a whole bunch of them that are coming through right now.
Like what?
You've been talking about them all night tonight.
Well, you're not asking me a specific question, so I think say that again. I'm against Sandstino as it's designed right now. The issue is these people come up and buy property that's ag land, and then they expect us to allow that they have the right to change the zoning and get infrastructure built for highest and best use for their financial gain.
How about
And-
the project behind Kmart?
What? I guess,
The project behind Kmart,
it's already approved like 20 years ago, so why are you bringing that up?
just wondering if you were in favor of it or not.
I don't know what exactly they're doing because they've got, I would have concerns if we have to facilitate the millions of dollars necessary to provide that development. I know they took $30 million out of road funds to increase the capacity of Missouri Flat one time, and they're probably going to need another $80 million to increase it again to facilitate that. I have an issue with paying for other people's development projects out of the public funds. That's my issue.
Mike?
I didn't intend to speak tonight, but there were a couple of questions asked to Sue and Jack, and I appreciate you coming here and doing this, that they couldn't answer because I think there were questions directed at sitting supervisors. When I joined the board, there were 3 alternatives to the Mount Murphy Bridge. They were already down to 3. Okay? I don't care what a DOT employee has to say. They don't make the decisions. The board does. And I don't believe any alternative has been selected. Now, through this process, I've become very well aware of the benefits and shortcomings of each alternative. And I've begun to determine what I think might be the best scenario for this community. But I haven't decided, the board hasn't decided, and no DOT or no employee or no foot on the street is making that call. As to the discretionary responsibilities of a supervisor, we have that discretion to say no, particularly if they're asking for something in excess of our general plan. Now, if they have an environmental study that supports it, there's also the latitude to say yes. But I don't know who you're talking to, but supervisors have the discretion to say no. And this is very different than the situation in Georgetown for Dollar General, where it was a commercial use on commercially zoned property in a commercially zoned district. It may be unpopular as hell, but it's a property rights issue, and it's different. I had some other things, but this is their evening.
Okay, well, if you have a question for Sue, this is the time.
Well, I think he gave a speech. I'll give a speech. So, when he brought up the Dollar General store, there was enough evidence that they could have denied that project, and they chose not to. So, I hope you remember when he says the Board of Supervisors makes these decisions, not the state. Because so many times they justify what they do based on somebody having a gun to their head. The other issue is, this isn't going to hurt anything, these measures. It's stuff that's already in the general plan that we're asking them to implement before they do any more massive development. That's G. You know, they might find with their water supply and demand plan that they don't have the water to do what they want to do. And then maybe that will cause a problem. The other thing with E, it is basically Measure Y with some cleanup, which has not ended the world in El Dorado County and stopped development dead in its tracks. So I appreciate the time to share these, because.
I want to give you some numbers because my problem with Measure Y originally was I didn't think it would do what people thought it would do. I didn't think it would do for local roads. And I call Cold Springs Road a local road. I don't call Missouri Flat or Highway 50 necessarily a local road. But since 1989 through 2015, they've collected $247 million in TIM fees. Spent $122 million of that on either Highway 50 or Highway 49. And on what they call local roads, they spent $103 million. Most of those local roads you will find are connected, like Missouri Flat is, to the freeway, or like Green Valley Road, really the high occupancy road. And I think what's wrong, and I think what's being fixed right now, they're looking at the TIM fee and they've changed some of the roads that they're putting into that to allow more of the TIM fee collected money to be spent in the neighborhoods where they're collected. And I think that's a good thing. And I'm speaking to part of what's in this Measure E because she's suggesting that it stay in the districts. But you can't say it that easily. Don't let people tell you, I don't care who it is. And I don't know anything to anybody anymore. I don't even have a wife anymore, unfortunately, so I don't have to answer to anyone. So I'm going to tell you what I want you to do. You've heard the confusion, and you heard me lose my temper some. I don't know where that gentleman went. Maybe he got mad. Oh, there he is over there. But my temper is because people want answers, but they don't want to do their homework.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I heard my dad tell me that when I was in the 4th grade, but we don't do our homework. Therefore, we don't know what we should be asking of our elected officials. They need our help. But to help them, we need to be informed. We need to look at the general plan and see what it says. This Measure G that's on here has a whole list of things that it's going to fix, it's going to put in or take out. You need to sit down with the general plan. You can find it online and see what it does change and what it doesn't change and see if you like that. Don't take my word that it's wrong or Sue's word that it's right. Just look for yourself. Do your homework. Do what you would expect your elected officials to do. Know what they're talking about. But thank you for letting me spiel off tonight, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming.
I have one more comment, but I will say another thing myself. I went to the county website and I saw the planning department, somebody's analysis of these two plans. They've got it up, and frankly, it didn't help me at all, so. Sue, I hope you will help in that.
Yeah, I would go to saveourcounty.net. The board, it's interesting that the county who opposes this gets to write the ballot questions, the ballot statements. And I know. And the ballot information. And we have no ability or funding to be able to do that. So we have a website that has all the background on it and all those things. And I just want to mention, again, I've been in land use for a long time. And I'm working with a lot of different people, a land use attorney, a wonderful group of people that really racked through these policies. And I just want to mention number 6, and Jack brought it up, that these funds should have been, right now you could pay to improve, you put a project in Georgetown and that money goes into the pot where they can spend it in Missouri Flat. And in the existing general plan we have, it says, under transportation, there's a policy that says mitigation fees and assessments collected for infrastructure shall be applied to the geographic zone from which they originated and may be applied to existing, oh, we added that. but it says that they should be applied to, that's already in the general plan. There's so many things in there that they're not implementing it. And then we added that because of what Jack says, we're putting in great new roads while our existing roads are falling apart. And so we've asked, maybe that new development that you put your house there, they could use the funds to improve the road and maintain it.
We have time for one more question.
Well, I don't really have a question but I do want to make a couple comments. My name is Bill George. I'm the current president of the board of directors at EID. I've been on the board for 13 years. Have worked not only on our board, but also on the board of EQUAPA, which is the Colorado Water and Power Authority, which was a joint powers authority created by Jack and myself and a couple other folks back 11, 12 years ago in order to negotiate with SMUD for additional space to store water. I don't want to address that particular, because that addresses the future. I'll just make an editorial comment that we are working on that and spending the money to do that, to acquire the water rights for that additional 40,000 acre feet in order to meet the water general plan that was put out by the El Dorado County Water Agency. To say there is no water plan is false. It's a lie. Okay? Not only does the water agency have a water master plan for the build out to meet the requirements of the general plan, 2004 general plan, EID has a 20-year strategic plan for water. And right now, we are not, I want to repeat, we are not in a drought here in El Dorado County. We are in a statewide declared drought by Governor Brown and the State Water Resources Control Board. Okay? That's a fact. Sly Park is spilling. It's been spilling for over a month. That means it's full and it's overrun at the top. Okay? All of our reservoirs will fill and spill this year. Okay? We have not run short of water in the last 4 years. We have water rights and access to about 63,000 acre feet of water. We sold less than 30,000 acre feet of water last year. That's not even half, okay? And it's a bit less than that because of the state enforced drought restrictions, which we personally, I've been on conference calls the last 2 or 3 weeks with the state, well, not with the state board, but with people who are going to the state board. Tomorrow's a workshop, for instance. The state board, unfortunately, is inhabited with, how do I say this politically correct? I can't, but the staff of the state board look at this drought, the statewide drought. Now, parts of the state are in a drought, okay, don't get me wrong, but they are looking at this as a crisis that's too good to go to waste, okay? So they would like to change what they consider now, what we have now as an emergency drought conservation program. They would like to make that permanent. We think that's wrong, okay? So anyhow, I just want to clarify, we do not have a water problem here in EID or Georgetown, okay? Georgetown has a little bit more problem than we do because they only have one reservoir, but we have a series of reservoirs, and because the board members prior to my tenure had the foresight, working with Congress, to buy Sly Park Reservoir from the Bureau of Reclamation. And one of the problems alluded to earlier was this 15,000 acre feet of Fazio water that Jack talked about from 1992. Vic Fazio was in office. Did anybody remember Vic Fazio? Aren't many. But he was in office that got this bill passed. And Jack is absolutely right. It was held up primarily because of the general plan. However, since then, the holdup has been the United States Bureau of Reclamation. If you think the county is tough, you should try to deal with the Bureau. It's almost impossible. But we have achieved another 17,000 acre feet, which is part of that 63,000. And right now, the diversion point is Folsom Reservoir. We don't have the infrastructure to take all that water out of there, so we're working on moving the diversion point up the hill so we can serve it by gravity. So just bottom line, we are not in a drought here in El Dorado County. I know we're still under a drought restrictions but we're trying to get that removed. And we do, as what Jack said earlier, the procedure for planning was absolutely correct. The county comes to us. We have no planning responsibility at all as far as planning for residential or anything else. But the county comes to us, and we have a form, and we say, yeah, we can serve this water in that area. If we can't, we tell them we can't, and that's the way it is.
Thank you, Mr. George. And I think we try to keep this at an hour.
Okay.
So I know you guys have to
I
say,
just
but
wanted
that's
really quick.
really quick.
Well, in this, we're talking about a county water supply and demand management plan. And
Water agency
and
has
you
it.
need to talk to Brian Bierkamp, because about 2 months ago, he just said we need to get that water plan in place at the Board of Chambers. So you may want to talk to Brian.
It's in place. Trust me.
And remember, the Grange Scholarship Fund, if you've got your money's worth, the bottle's hard to go. Thank you for coming.